Welcome to the MMHP and the 989, channeling all styles and eras of Michigan music history.
Hello, Michigan music lovers. This is Scott Baker. I want to welcome you to the Michigan Music History Podcast. I am flanked by Michigan music royalty. To the left, Dr. J. To the right, Sir Fred. We cut from just around the block of the Michigan Rock Legends Hall of Fame in Bay City, Michigan, here at Studio 163 in Essexville. And now it's time to grab a favorite beverage, hit the cruise, and take a trip back with us through Michigan's rich music history.
This podcast is sponsored by our friends at Electric Kitsch, located at 2106 Kosciuszko Avenue in Bay City, Michigan. And now, here's your host, Scott Baker.
Hey everybody, we are back for another great episode of the Michigan Music History Podcast. We are excited to be bringing you from Studio 163 in Essexville an interview with Mr. Jeff Yantz. How you doing, Jeff?
Fantastic.
Great. I got Dr. J in the house helping me out tonight. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Got some news about the Material Girl.
Yeah. There's pictures popping up on her Instagram. And Sir Fred took the night off. He's going up for a big award in Saginaw, so we got to let him get that award so we can scoop him back up and talk about that.
That's right. We're wishing him nothing but good luck.
Yeah.
He's very deserving.
Yes. How cool. Well, we're going to have a great night of Americana music talk, Material Girl music talk, and there's even some photography talk at the end here. So what's going on with Madonna there, Doc?
Well, the big news is it seems very likely that Madonna was in Bay County last week, June the 3rd. I got an email from a friend of mine who I had met. She was a big Madonna fan and came to Bay City a couple of years ago, read some things on my website, and kind of asked me to show them around some of the Madonna sites. So, we went to Mercy Hospital, went to Elsie's former house on Smith Street, Visitation Church. Well, of course, you had to stop by the former Karis Red Lion, and we went to St. Laurent Brothers, of course, the notorious Bay City Times, who kind of took Madonna's words out of context and started this whole big controversy in Bay City. I don't know, where else did we go? Oh, St. Laurent Brothers. Did I mention that?
Did you go to the gravesite?
They did. Yeah, I didn't take them out. They knew where that was.
Yeah, that's a big scenery. My grandparents are at the one right across the street from us.
That is a beautiful cemetery out there, Calvary Cemetery in Linwood. Very different from any other cemeteries in Bay City. But to get back to the story here, Val just sent me an email and said, gee, look for Madonna in Bay City. I follow her on Instagram, and she's up in the Traverse City area visiting her father's winery. Mr. Ciccone was celebrating his 90th birthday.
Unbelievable.
So, I wrote back and said, well, I'll go over to St. Laurent Brothers, or maybe I'll stop by the Calvary Cemetery, kind of half jokingly. And then I said, it's probably worth it just to take a drive out there. What if Madonna actually stopped by on her way from Traverse City to visit her mother's grave and her grandmother's grave? They're right in the same location at Calvary Cemetery. And, I could go out there and, maybe even meet her. Who knows? But anyways, so I took the time to drive out to Calvary Cemetery. And sure enough, there were fresh flowers on her mother's grave and on Elsie's grave with notes.
Oh, really?
Now, Madonna whoever didn't sign them, but it just seems it was too much of a coincidence that, that would have just popped up there on June the 3rd out of nowhere. So anyways, very cool. And, when Madonna does come to town, she never makes a big deal out of it. No. She just comes in and sometimes, visits some spots that she remembers from her childhood, but always stops at her mother's grave and her beloved grandmother's grave also.
Yeah, I remember hearing a couple River Roars back, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. She was in town for the River Roar, and she come out of St. Lawrence, and there was a guy I was working with, and as she opened the door or whatever, stepped out or something, he fell off his bike because she was coming right into him. She apologized, helped him up, and he goes, "Oh my gosh, it's Madonna!"
Yeah, and amazing.
And this stuff happens. So
anyways, I took a picture of the written note.
We're gonna have to put this on our Facebook site.
Oh, okay.
Definitely.
Yeah, I've got a real good shot of it. But anyways, this is how it reads: "For all the particles you scattered into the universe, thank you."
Oh,
so again, nothing that would specifically say it was from Madonna, but.
Yeah,
Madonna's into that spiritual thing.
Absolutely.
So,
did you see what she put in the Instagram post too? How spiritual her dad is, and there was a lot of history, and she brought in all her kids, and everybody was celebrating. And
it was really neat. I got a hold of Mr. Ciccone because we're planning to do what I hope is a pretty nice little Madonna collage of photographs that were shot by Dick Van Ostrand, who was a former Bay City Times photographer and also
a friend of mine.
Yeah, Dick, what a great guy. And he's, we served together on the board of the Historical Museum of Bay County for a number of years before Dick passed. So anyway, it'll be kind of a tribute to Dick, and of course, a tribute to Bay City's most famous native by far. So yeah, we're really looking forward to that.
So you finally got a hold of him?
Yeah, I did. I was kind of hoping
because I think a couple of months ago.
I should say I didn't get a hold of Mr. Ciccone. I got a hold of his secretary or whoever handles the phone calls. And I think, we've talked about this before. He I'm sure he probably feels that he's been burned a few times.
Absolutely. By
Bay City and the way Bay City has treated Madonna over the years. Yeah. So he wasn't really interested. I was just looking for, if he had something that he wanted us to display. But, the photographs will really be nice. And these are photographs, I think only one of them has ever been published.
Wonderful.
One of the shots that Dick took, he was right at the foot of the stage, was used when the Bay City Times wrote about Madonna's response, and she apologized from the stage for the misunderstanding. But
that was at the Palace, maybe.
That was at the Pontiac Silverdome.
Pontiac Silverdome show. That would have been in the late '80s. Then.
Yeah, it was 87.
87. Okay.
Yeah.
I told in a podcast before that Julie and I've been up there and we had a good drink with him one time.
Yeah.
And he was all about how's Bay City doing. He was really intrigued, and we enjoyed a glass together. And
he spent a lot of time in Bay City as well. Because when his wife was still alive, they came to Bay City all the time, and of course Elsie helped take care of the kids during holidays and summer vacations and so on. So that's after Madonna's mother died, she and Madonna really had a strong bond.
Right. Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah. Well, that's fantastic because, I do believe she probably would have stopped by at some point some night or here. I knew that as soon as I saw that. I'm like, run into her.
Yeah.
Man, what's your Madonna story there, Mr. Yantz?
I used to deliver papers to her. I'm sorry. Is there not somebody in Bay City that wants to say?
Well, you were born at Mercy Hospital.
Her mom was part of my paper route, and so and I would get an extra $5 at Christmas time. Yes, when I would collect.
That was before CDs.
It was before CDs.
You could have got one of them maybe down the road.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
CD maxi single.
That was it. Absolutely right.
Now, Jeff, you delivered to Elsie?
No, I'm joking.
Oh, okay.
I think it's funny because as the era. It's kind of Madonna. I was teenage years into the 20s when I was, and just amazing how she's from Bay City, and the quote unquote rumors that you would hear where it would be and initially it was like real people saying, yes, I was I did deliver papers, right? Then it was like when you got into your 20s, it was late 20, then that was almost like the joke, like everybody was, her mom's paper boy, and I'm like, how much? What she get? The New York Times, the Detroit Free Press. There's only so many papers, dude. So yeah.
Well, of course, and her mom passed away in 1963. So
right, exactly. Yeah. So when somebody was born in '65, I'm like, sorry, dude, that's not you. Yeah. Oh yeah. That's crazy.
Oh, wow.
How long was she in Bay City?
Well, she never lived here. She was born here, and her dad Tony, he got a job working in the it was some division of Chrysler in the Pontiac area. So actually, she grew up in an area of Pontiac that was very close to where the Silver Dome was built.
Oh, wow.
And I guess when she was a kid, they used to play in the field that eventually became the Silver Dome in its parking lot. So she never really lived in Bay City. She just spent a lot of time here because, it was her mother's hometown. And, she was very special because she was the first female granddaughter of Elsie. So they had that bond. Yeah. And Madonna's mother was Elsie's first daughter. So there was just all this connection. And,
that's cool.
It was very tough. When Madonna was only 5 when her mother died, and Elsie became kind of like a mother figure for her. And they were tight. They were very, very close.
Oh yeah, that's the Pontiac Silver. Did she ever play the Pontiac? When you said that, she had.
That's where all these photographs were taken.
Okay.
That Dick Van Ostrand took. She had this big concert. I don't know how many, 50 or 60,000 people there. That was really at the height of, Madonna mania there in 1987. And
that was Material Girl or the movie soundtrack era with Sean.
Who's that girl?
Who's that girl? Yeah.
It
was all after Like a Virgin, which just went tremendous.
Yeah.
So.
In fact, I think it was the Who's That Girl tour.
Okay.
Yeah, because when she was on Jane Pauley, that was what she was promoting.
Okay.
They did that 43-minute interview, which you can see the thing in its entirety on YouTube.
Yep.
And anybody that takes the time can see that there was no, there was absolutely no insult whatsoever. She was just, it was a childhood memory. Just like kids, you remember smells when you're a kid. And I grew up in the First Ward, and I could smell that Dow chemical plant when we used to play in the woods along the Saginaw River. I never knew it was the Dow plant. In fact, I didn't know it was the Dow plant until Dick Van Ostrand was telling me about the story where when he was, the Times had him do the photography at Madonna's concert, and Madonna's manager, I think it was Liz Rosenberg at that time, heard that Dick was from Bay City. And of course, the big flap had already happened there. I think it was a day or two before the concert where the Bay City Times had printed that story on the front page that she had insulted the town, that she asked Dick, what was this chemical plant? And he told her it was the Dow plant. And so Liz told Madonna, and when she stopped the show 6 or 7 songs in, she mentioned the Dow plant, which she did not know.
Up to that point.
Yeah, up to that point, right.
And that's the one on Patterson.
Yeah, we all know where the Dow property is.
Yep.
But, back in those days, Dow was producing Bay gasoline, and they had that famous logo, Dow know-how in every drop. That was their tagline for Bay gasoline. And, there were Bay gasoline stations all around this area, in Michigan, around Bay City. And, they were one of the major polluters of the, unfortunately, Saginaw River and Saginaw Bay. And Dow got out of the gasoline business, would have been probably, I'm going to say maybe mid to late 70s.
Okay.
And, by that time, Madonna, she was in high school. wasn't coming to Bay City like she did when she was younger. Yeah, and then they had moved to Rochester. Yeah. So I'm not even sure she knew the plant was torn down because Elsie eventually moves over to Dean Street. They sell the house. In fact, she sold the house to a guy that I went to high school with. He was a couple grades ahead of me. It was named Jerry Trogan. They lived in that house for many years.
Oh, see, cool. I believe you, but those people, those guys that were always the newspaper delivered, no, I don't believe them. That's cool.
No. Well, there are all kinds of stories. People, you have to read things in Memories of Bay City that they went to high school with Madonna, and she was a snob. And what are you talking about? She didn't ever go to high school in Bay City. I mean, geez, come on. So, get a life.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of those Facebook memories when they put them up there, and then there'll be over 1,000 hits of messages about her and her stinky little plant, and it's like, come on, people, just go back and watch the video. Don't even comment on this anymore.
Yeah,
this is old news.
Right,
it's water under the bridge, and if you ever want her to recognize the city again, you just gotta shut up.
Yeah. Well, and if she's visiting.
Yeah.
So
yep.
Maybe she likes the smell.
Yeah, that's right. Well, everybody confuses it with the sugar plant.
Yeah. It is true.
And it has nothing to do with the sugar plant whatsoever.
That's a whole other stinky areas. Yeah. That's South End stink.
So we have different smells.
Yeah, that's
How
right.
About that?
That's true. Mr. Jeff Yantz, how are you doing, man?
Great.
What's going on with you right now? What's your current making singles?
Yeah,
doing that thing,
recording, having a good time doing that. Did get it. I mean, luckily for my sanity, got a chance to. I mean, kind of keep playing. Last summer, James and I played out where we could, and we've been, we're starting it back up again. So, I mean, it's I can't go full bore. Critics say don't quit day job, but when we get the chance. Just going out and having a really good time with it. It's just it's challenging to play as a duo, and fill things up. But
what's cool is that you have and people that have seen you lately might know you've got a whole amassed army in front of your feet now. You have an entire band. You've learned how to do the programming, the MIDI, everything, and you've taken it on the road. And you're from the old school where it was, no, you give me three chords and the truth and acoustic guitar. I don't even care if it's mic'd.
Yeah.
And now here you are jumping ahead of everybody else and going full bore studio live.
Yeah.
How's that feel?
It's interesting. It's funny because I was, using things like rhythm tracks and drum, the drum machines and some of those things are. A decade ago, I would, laugh. I would say there's just
you were
no way.
Purist.
Yeah, but you know what I've noticed, and I know with audiences are, they're more sophisticated. I think they want, they like to hear different things. I mean, just humming and strumming sometimes just doesn't do it. So, I noticed that early on playing live, I noticed that when I could play guitar and harmonica together. It was one of those things that even if it was solo and all of a sudden there's another voice that comes, it's not just my voice, it's not just the guitar, but the harmonica, it turned heads. And so I noticed in the live setting, people want to, and it's kind of neat because playing with James plays, plays keyboard. He dabbles with the accordion. It's kind of funny. We're, playing Bay City. Anytime we're playing in town in Bay City, I always say there is a law in Bay City that you have to have an accordion player.
Yeah, that's the polka law.
That's a polka law. Exactly. You guys are familiar with it.
Especially if you're going, south of Columbus Avenue.
Exactly.
Right.
And Jeff did. He dipped into Saginaw to pull James Nelson out.
Yes, and I think that location though, I think you have to have two accordion players. So that's where that goes.
The dueling accordion.
Yes, but strangely enough, James does not play polka on it. So switching that up, playing harmonica, he plays harmonica as well as keyboard, and I guitar, I'll play ukulele. We noticed changing it up adds a little extra energy and just different. It just kind of keeps things going.
I remember when you were plugging in and you got your first. Not first, but your first one you used all the time. You plugged in that acoustic. You started getting vibed. Got your harmonica out. you're doing solo shows. James comes along, and you either were doing solo shows or duo shows, but you added the floor kick. That was the next thing.
Yeah. Still use that.
So you have an element, and that was a homemade instrument, right?
Yes. Yeah. My buddy Mike made that. Yeah,
That's so
great.
cool.
Yeah, it's just a
Mike Grahowski.
Yeah, Mike Grahowski had a piezo pickup, and I said, "This is what I think." I'm pretty sure Mike and I were at Ann Arbor Folk Fest. And we were there, and an artist came out. Man, I can't even tell you who it was. One of the first artists that was on the bill that night. And Ann Arbor Folk Fest is always cool to see. But this person came out, and it was a stomp. But it was big.
Big wooden thing.
Yeah, it was like a big wooden, and it was a crazy, it sounded great. And Mike he's a perfectionist, and he's a technician, and he's creative, and he's like, I think we could do something like that. And I'm like, well, it's too big. I don't even want to carry it in my car with the contraption this person had. He goes, no, I got it. And it is literally just this little, it's this little foot pedal, and you can buy them, as well. But I use his still, and it's just nice. It's just got that, I've done gigs where I play bass drum. I just bring that instead of lugging a bass drum if I'm playing the percussion for somebody. So,
well, having just talked to you recently, we did a full-on lifetime style story, including your business that you work at.
Yeah.
For the Route-Based City, which is due to come out here in the next month. Awesome. And there's another reason I wanted to pull you here in the podcast so people can hear it right from your own mouth. But I, as a musician myself, I was lucky enough, everybody knows my backstory that's listened to all these podcasts, but you were the one that I could, other than Bob Hauser and Saginaw, you were my Bay City go-to to ask about songwriting, to get my foot in the door, to get the inspiration behind it going out. And I find out, as time has gone past, and both of us looked at it as like, as time goes past, that's when all the history builds up, obviously. Yeah. You guys were in the Midwest with the Americana movement as it happened. You were the Michigan, while Wilco and Son Volt were down in Chicago or in Illinois. Mm-hmm. Same years, Uncle Tupelo busted up. You guys were doing the acoustic version of what they went electric with. You both had your debut albums come out at the same time when you were in the One Trick Ponies.
Oh, wow.
I wanted to make people know that there is a common denominator here in the water for that time period, which is 93 through 97 there, where when you guys put your debut out, it was right in time with all that movement. And it was a Midwest thing. And you guys were just a little more north with a lot less budget. And that's all the difference was.
Yeah.
I think Jill Jack might have been the only other Americana one I knew of in Michigan at that point,
doing stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah. No, it was, it was an era up here. And like you said, low budget, absolutely low budget. I mean, when we started out, it was, our first project, we had 2 microphones,
Yeah, I think that's when I saw you, when you were first starting out. It was on Midland Street. Was it Lumberjacks?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and they had that little saloon over there on one side.
You got it.
Yeah, it was great. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, we love, because that was kind of fun, because that was, that era, it was kind of the, they'd let us, we'd play 2 nights. So
right.
that we didn't need to lug our stuff home, we just thought that was the greatest thing.
Well, that's kind of when Midland Street sort of started to take off, I think. Wasn't it right there?
That was huge back then. Yeah, no, there were, people were parking, blocks away to go to Midland Street in the 90s. It was.
That was the heart of Midland Street. I would dare say people that I talked to from, the guys that are a couple years ahead of us have played all those strips.
Yeah.
The hot spot started about 87 on Midland Street. 89, Water for the Pool was rocking it up and down there when Donnie Brown took off for the Verve Pipe.
Yep.
You guys came in, Larry McCray came in, or he was already finishing up and he was going national.
Yep.
McCray Brothers. And that whole run made it through the 90s into maybe the early aughts. And then everybody started going into the DJ mode, karaoke mode.
Correct.
I would say it ended by like 2007 maybe. It's 2008.
Yeah,
so.
where was that place down on Washington Avenue where they had music? It was down toward the where the Washington. Was it the Washington Pub? Is that what they call it?
On the corner there.
Yeah,
of
but
Columbus
it was before that. It was farther.
Oh, Larry
north.
said he played that, and
That's because I remember seeing Water for the Pool there several times.
Yes.
Do you remember what that?
It.
Was it a bar, or it must have been a bar?
You're not talking about. Man.
It would have been on Washington Avenue, right down in that block where the Washington.
Or Washington Lane.
We'll have to
And I don't think it was, because I remember that place when Ralph Tripkowski owned it,
Oh wow. Yeah.
and it wasn't that bar. It was further down the street and north of.
Because was the one back streets, right? Was
Okay,
that was the east side?
Yeah, but that was
south, right?
That was
Yeah.
just before my ability to go out and go to bars
Yeah,
myself. I heard of that.
Me too, but I used to sneak in.
Yeah, Backstreets was down by Columbus Avenue.
Yes.
Yes,
exactly.
if you continue it across Washington, and then it was back. They changed all the streets and everything.
Yeah.
Larry was talking about that place in his
But
podcast.
the Burdens used to play at
What, Backstreets?
No, not
Backstreets
just
a lot.
Backstreets, but that place. Remember, he said he came up here from Saginaw. It was the only place that allowed him to play, and he was making money at it, him and his brothers. And then they go back to Saginaw early in the morning, and he go to work the next day.
Oh,
He named it, but I can't remember what he said. It was our last podcast that we
Yeah,
recorded.
okay, we'll have to go back over the tapes.
Yeah.
We'll run the videotape.
There we go.
Was it Mick something or?
Oh boy,
I don't remember. I have to go over the
of me, I
tapes
can't
myself.
remember that.
For the life of me.
But I liked that. I liked that little club. That was fun.
Oh yeah.
And the Verve Pipe and all that other good stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Man, everything cycled right through here.
Yes.
And that was cool. And I did want to add that to this episode though, that we had the Verve Pipe take off, and they kind of migrated to Kalamazoo, Grand Rapids, Kalamazoo, Lansing,
Yes.
and hit it. Larry came out of here, and they got known as the Detroit guy, which he never needed a tag for. But everybody tags you Detroit or Ann Arbor or whatever.
Exactly.
And then there was the One Trick Ponies, who got stuck around here.
Yeah.
Got to do shows all over the state. Got to do some national things down the line, but came out bursting of the same period as Wilco, Son Volt.
Yeah.
Same style, brought a whole other element, something that you don't even think about at the time. Like when we talked, you're like, we know who Graham Parsons is, but did we care? No, we just did our thing,
Yeah. Yeah. No.
Jeff, did you take the name from the Paul Simon movie, or was it have a different?
No, I think it was. It
source.
was. Yeah. I mean, it was. Obviously Ted Hoagland is the other One Trick Pony, and I think. I mean, when we started, Ted was in California, and he was trying to kind of do he's trying to say, hey, he's gonna work in the. He wanted to work in the Hollywood in the industry. And it was kind of a time frame thing with his parents, where it was one of those, okay, we're going to give you so much time, and he did his thing, and he realized that California probably wasn't his jam at this point in time. So
He was trying to be an actor.
He was actor, just even working in film production.
Okay.
I loved it because he would be. I don't even know what the position's called, but basically the guys that camp on the set.
Key grip.
Just to exactly. He was a
I hope Ted hears
He
this.
was right. Yeah, I don't know if was he. I don't think he was. No, I won't go there.
Yep.
But he would basically camp out, and I'm like, so that was your job? He's like, yeah. And then, I said, well, what would you stay? So you'd stay up and guard it? He goes, no, I'd go to sleep. And I'm like, so you weren't even good at that? He's like, no, not really. But he was out there. And so, and he was back, but it was really cool. I mean, when we'd met, it was kind of almost instant where we really had the same kind of musical interests, and some of the stuff that I was playing at. I think I was playing at Steamers when he met, he met me, his wife now, Claire. They were sitting, I'll never forget, they were sitting to the left of me, and I'm playing indoors at Steamers. It's not that big of a place, so you can pretty much envision that table. And I played Replacement Song and just turned their heads, and it was like, that was kind of almost like the instant we started talking. Ted's a huge fan, and obviously Claire was too, but it was one of those things where it was, that was kind of the first connection, and it was really about from the get-go with him of creating something new, creating something ourselves, I guess.
And you said you brought the REM background and alternative mode and your love, and then he brought the replacement side of it, which initially started as a very homespun acoustic-y thing.
Yeah.
I mean, by the second and third albums, it branched into the Telecaster, getting the big boy guitars out, as you would say.
We could afford those guitars. Yeah.
I'm curious, do you remember what the replacement song was that you performed? That was the key thing?
I think it was Skyway.
Oh, all right. There we go.
It was Skyway. Yeah. So it was, and of course I didn't have a 12-string guitar, it didn't sound anything like it, but,
enough to turn ahead.
Enough to turn ahead of a lyric. So that was kind of fun, but yeah. And it was, and I think that was the deal where we one of the things we tried to keep was it was our own. And that's, I think there's that being, breaking ground where you're like, I want to do something that, it's never been heard. We weren't out that far. We were like, we want this to be our own, Celebration is a fantastic song, but we didn't want to be in a band that was going to play that, we just didn't want to do that. And so early on gigs, when we would start, when we got together and realized first of all, we realized we wanted to record right away. And we always had the premise of 10, we always called it 10 years. Whatever we're doing right now, if we listen back in 10 years, are we going to be embarrassed? Or are we going to be proud of it? Mm-hmm. Is it going to do you think it would have meaning like it does now? And I think we would try to kind of, we kind of run that litmus test, as we were doing things. And we, obviously the majority of our set, when we start, it was all original. And around here at that point in time, that was
the two original bands that were around here were going national, and that was about and Mike Brush, like you're saying to me.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was kind of one of those things where they, locations wanted, you to play cover tunes and
of course,
and to do all that stuff and play, at least 4 hours or whatever it is.
This podcast is sponsored by our friends at Electric Kitsch. Located at 2106 Kosciuszko Avenue in Bay City, Michigan. They offer new and used records, including local to Michigan original vinyl and CDs, as well as clothing, electronic equipment, funky household items, music gear, and stringed instrument repair. You can find them on the web or call 989-402-1411.
What I think is fantastic, if people think back, anybody that loves music, whether you were born after the 90s or people that lived through it, think back to the mid-90s. It was from Nirvana sounds, Soundgarden sounds on the radio that went into the boy bands and girl bands and the TLCs and stuff. And here you guys are coming back with acoustic roots music that was like slamming or traditional, but with modern techniques, I would say, or whatever you brought to it, but with your own sound.
Yeah.
And it was something that just fell in the gap there that was so unheard of. I mean, nobody, unless you knew the guys at Uncle Tupelo and that were touring down in Chicago, you didn't know that sound.
No.
So that was something so unique to the Bay City.
Yeah.
So did you call yourselves the One Trick Ponies right from the start?
Yeah, we did. And I think you asked about the name. It was, I think we were, it's probably Ted and I and a 6-pack or whatever. And we were just kind of mishmashing around names. And he brought it up. He's like, what about the One Trick Ponies? And I'm like, well, and I go, at the time, I don't know, when we were thinking about it, maybe we had 4 or 5 songs together or something. I'm like, I'm not even sure we have one trick. And we laughed. We just thought that was funny, and then it was just like, it was, One Trick Ponies. That was what, that was, it it stuck,
Cool.
And it was, it was fun. I'd be remiss if I didn't, Steve Klee, who I'd played in high school groups with, he played bass. It wasn't long after where I'm like, hey, can you come along and lend us a hand? And, and he was on board. and we went quite a while where we would play gigs with, I mean, we didn't have a drummer or a percussionist, and then we would bring a percussionist on. We'd kind of almost go as like a 3-piece, 2-piece, then a 3-piece. But we had to play coffee shops. What's that one on Saginaw Street across from Studio 23?
The old Brutopia? No. Or
no,
further down.
Well,
the Beatles and
Beatles
Yes.
and Beans.
Exactly. We played that place, and it was kind of like a day like today where it was 90 degrees out and ridiculously hot. And it was a evening at 7 till 9, and it was so fun because we had people just, we had people crammed into that place.
That's awesome.
Because we were so excited about our music. We wanted to tell anybody, anything that moved, we would talk about, hey, come to the gig. It felt like the Blues Brothers where we had that thing on top of the car. And,
Steve Klee, it takes me to where I wanted to go. And I don't know if Gary, let alone many people, know the story until the Route story comes out. But in high school, you were playing your first music, but you were a drummer back then.
Yeah, I started out playing drums in school.
And you played with Chad Cunningham, who was the guitar player, who went on to be one of the biggest music promoters for the River Roar and everything in Bay City, kind of a Midwest guy.
And his father was a big music promoter. I don't know if you know.
He goes way back to Ron?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, the Del Reys were the hot Bay City band back in the early to mid 60s. So I did a big story on them on my website.
I got to play Ron's green Slingerland drum set, right? And so in the treat was when Ron would come down and play with us, because he still had it. I mean, he's Ron, he's great. And Ron's set had calfskin heads.
Ooh.
Yeah. And guess what I did?
Put a hole in one.
Yeah, I did.
That had to be stretched beyond control.
Oh yeah, it was crazy. I was like, oh yeah, he's a great guy though. He's like, hey,
Ron was kind of the star of that band too. Back in those days, the drummer was such a big deal. He could twirl his sticks. And he was kind of a showman. He was good.
Yeah,
he was pre Pete Woodman.
Yeah, right.
Yes, but so his son Chad was playing guitar. And then, Chad and I was playing drums, and then, we kind of talked, everybody wants to play guitar, but we're like, and Steve's, nickname growing up was Cheeks. So we're like, Cheeks, you got to play bass. And I think I've told you this before, but, he committed, he bought a Hondo bass. It was nice. It works, but he didn't commit to buy the case, Cheeks was a little cheap. So he had a cardboard box that he would bring,
like the Ramones.
Yes,
carrying them in the shopping bag.
Yes, he didn't know how cool he was right back then, and we called it the refrigerator box. And then I think it was one of our rehearsals way back when. I think Chad actually cut a hole in the top of the case, so it was a little handle for him. So he's like, so now it'll look a little better, and it'll be So he thought that was good, but eventually he got a case. But
Chad went on to do his promotions and Prime Brothers, and he even had the studio and the record label, Bullfrog Records, for a little while.
Yeah.
He did that One Question Mark album in the late 90s.
Well, right, and
our second project was recorded there.
And you were on the label. You were on Bullfrog Records,
right?
Yeah.
So our All Alone Together was recorded with.
Well, I'm hoping that Chad will be part of our display at the Historical Museum of Bay County in Michigan Rock and Roll. We've talked to him a little bit about some photographs from some of the concerts he promoted. He's got quite a guitar collection. I would certainly like to let people see. So anyway,
that's awesome.
We're discussing it, and hopefully it'll happen.
Well, this is cool how this ties into the history here, because Chad started with you. You guys had, what was the name of the band back then?
The Hitmen.
Oh, there we are.
Oh, yeah.
And this is at John Glenn in the mid 80s, early 80s.
Yeah, mid 80s. Yeah, it would have been. I think it would be 85, 86. Yeah, 80. Yeah, I think 86.
So, who are your musical inspirations for the Hitmen?
Especially coming as a drummer.
Yeah, trying to think of the 80s here.
I was
Stuart Copeland.
No, I wasn't that good. That would have been nice. I loved him, but that was another Planet kind of thing. But I would say, I was taking lessons from Herder, growing up as a kid, and then I played in high school, and I just always gravitated toward, I just wanted to play the kit, so I stopped playing at school because I'm like, they're only giving me one drum, I want to play the whole thing. But influences, I remember playing, oh my gosh, REO Speedwagon, you can tune a piano, you can't tune a fish. And the way my setup was in my basement where I would play, I would get my headphones and I would get them set up, get my kit set up in my basement, and then my stereo, and sorry for you younger people, but I had to put a record, a vinyl record out on.
Oh my gosh.
And that was on the second floor of my house. And then I ran a wire down the clothes chute.
Oh.
So all the way down 2 floors.
That's awesome.
And then I had my headphones, so I would have to drop the needle and run my butt all the way down. So I could never get the intro to any.
You couldn't start the show. You always jumped on halfway.
And then I'm going to play the whole side of that album because I'm like, why go back up? So
Alan Gratzer.
Yep, that's what I'm doing. Yeah.
All right.
So that's how I learned, that was it.
What a great story.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think the funny part from that is when you said you went to college, couldn't carry the set to your dorm.
No.
So you kind of needed to figure out how to get your musical aspirations out, and you were starting to really become a songwriter at that point.
Yeah. I did write. I wrote a little bit in high school, but never really, much. Kind of kept it in the basement, so to speak. But yeah, and then my brother broke up with his girlfriend, who happened to buy him a guitar, and his bad luck became my good luck because he didn't want to see that guitar after the breakup, and I really wanted to know more on how to play a guitar, so it was a picador. I played the guitar for quite a while. Actually, the beginning of the One Trick Ponies, it was a picador, and Ted's guitar was a Ventura. I think the combined value of those guitars would probably, I'm going to go maybe $90 together.
Yeah, and nowadays...
That's with new strings.
Oh, that's a new string.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Would probably be collector's items today.
Well, I don't know, but yeah, it was.
Awesome.
We were skiffle, and we didn't even. We were skiffle because we had no money. Yeah, that's why.
Yeah,
that was it.
And then you said Cheeks taught you a lot on the guitar.
Yeah, he did. We were roommates at CMU, and he learned. He's a great player, and he learned quickly. And I was like, "How are you learning this so quick?" And he we can tell the story now, but we couldn't tell it back in the day with his parents. But he goes, I take your guitar and I go into my car and I play, and I'm like, "Well, are you going to class?" I don't know if he's going to class, but he was so inspired to learn that he really took to it. And then I was like, you got to show me what's going on. And, I picked up half of what he knows, but that's how I got my start.
That was the 3 chords and the truth beginning.
Yeah, that was it. And then I did, his name's Pat Shepard, out of Cook's Music. I took lessons from him. And he was, oh man, I can't think of his name. I was just talking to a buddy of mine, Tony Christie, that I was talking to him. We didn't know we both knew Pat, but, and it was funny because Pat was long. He had the long, gorgeous 80s rock hair. And, I'm guessing he might have actually taught me. He wasn't wearing a shirt. I don't know. Those guys never wore shirts in those days. So, and then there was me trying to learn my 3 chords in the true, so it was kind of interesting because, he'd have his Jackson guitar and I was bringing my picador in. It's just,
you're like, show me the REM song. He's like, here's a Poison song for you.
And he was great though. He kind of, sweetheart guy, super nice and he amazing player, and it was fun. And it was cool because at the same time at CMU, I was taking theory classes and I was taking vocal classes and piano classes. And so, along with that, he was giving me more building blocks of trying to be able to write, understand the theory, and kind of go through it that way.
That's awesome. I know you said you came home and you started tracking down Larry McCray just as he was putting out Ambition just before he met Paul Cook and did Delta Hurricane and kept going on that ride for a little while.
Yeah.
And you were asking him about pointers, and he was like, "You don't need to hear pointers. You just got to keep writing, huh?"
That's it. Yeah. And he was So it was. I mean, really just blues music. It was college.
You were going to Chicago even.
Yeah. Well, and it all stemmed from the juke joint.
Robert
Barkley show.
We got to get him in here too for
and
a podcast.
oh my gosh, he opened my world because it was, I'm right on campus. It was Sunday nights. You'd be studying, and I'm like, what is this? Mm-hmm. And the beauty of it is he opens it up. He displays it so well. I mean, he has from ground one. People like Jimmy Reed and, John, I knew nothing about that. So just understanding and getting a good feel for what that is, I'm like, I've got to go to Chicago. And so I did a couple trips to Chicago, got to see some, Magic Slim and the Teardrops, and realize, what's great about, at least when I was there in blues shows, is like they're on the little stage, then they're at the bar with you, mm-hmm. On the break. You just get to talk to the art. It's fantastic. And so being able to see that, I think it might have been Larry was played on the show, or however I learned of him. I'm like, he's playing in Saginaw. I got to go, so I would follow and see him, his brother and his band. And so that, and then obviously getting a chance to talk to him early on, it was cool. It was inspiring.
Wow. And then to think that when you come down the line as a roots musician, you brought the blues element, the REM element, and you got your own sound completely out of it, which you're taken now out to the streets and even further, because you got a career now in music.
Yeah.
Whether you're huge or not, you got a career in music, and it's always growing. It's always a growth and progress. You've always taken things and started your building blocks.
I think like a weakness early on was you could not pinpoint. Where do you put us? You're going to book us as where are we going to be, right? We didn't know what we were. We kind of so much of amalgamation of a lot of different things. And it's kind of interesting as we, just keep going, and the more I, keep writing and enjoying doing this, I kind of look at it as a strength,
Absolutely. And you don't see it then, but you look back at it and you're like, damn, that was a huge strength, because you're not putting everything on being that one kind of style. You're just being yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think, and it's interesting too, because it wasn't like, oh, this is what the trend is.
Yeah,
it really.
That's what I kind of said earlier. You kind of fell between everything with like it was like a brick falling on wood. It was like completely different,
or a turd in a punch bowl.
There you go.
How you look at it.
Yeah. That's awesome. I think, and as an upcoming songwriter myself, not knowing how to get in a scene or whatever it is, or how to even get a band together before that became a thing. Just getting done with as a music journalist in college, going to the Times, and I was a cook, and how do I go about this? And I see this story on you in the Bay City Times.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things you said. You're like, no one's ever been able to pigeonhole us. And that's one of the things you've said along about every other year. And if you get an opportunity to have press, you use that. And it's true. You don't know how you belong, but you've always done your own thing. And that has been your way forward. It's carried you all the way to what you are now.
Yeah.
And you've been able to get at least statewide exposure now, But that's amazing because it's hard to do. It's digging a hole.
Yeah.
It's digging, constantly digging for gold to hope something pans out.
Well, especially too when you got listeners too where you want. They're like, oh, I like this, so I want. They want the formula. Then you gotta. I want a full project of this. And my projects, even One Trick Ponies projects, they don't really give you that. It's gotta, it's gonna zig and it's gonna zag, as far as kind of the content and where it's at. Yeah, it stays within Americana, but I think it's interesting. I love when people, I think the one I always remember was the acquaintance. I won't call her a friend. I'll call her an acquaintance. But are you still doing that little jazzy thing that you do? And I was like, wow, jazz.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I'll take that.
Throw that in my bag of tricks.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I warmed up for miles, and okay, whatever. I'm like, jazz, that's crazy, but I'll take it.
That's awesome.
It's American, right?
Well, Jeff, tell us how did you go about recording like the first album? When you're starting out, how do you
Midland Street
how'd you do
above
it?
Mary's, above Brooklyn Boys, literally.
Yeah, literally.
Where that's at now.
Yes.
That used to be Mary's.
Exactly. Mary's Restaurant. So it was Ted and myself. We lived in that building.
Mm-hmm.
And I had an affection for, and when like 4-track recording came out, cassette 4-track, I would rent 4-track recording to learn more about it. I eventually bought one. And that first project is literally 2 microphones, a Tascam 424 recorder, and 2 sets of headphones.
And you just put it out remastered recently.
Yes. Yeah, Andy Reid remastered it. A couple years back, we had the 20th anniversary of it, and we did a show in Bay City. That was a hoot. We had a good time. Andy warmed up. That was fun. But him remastering, it was great because we remastered it to... I think it was a 2-inch tape.
Did you?
Yeah,
Oh, cool.
We did the whole analog. It was so cool. Yeah, it was a good, and it did kind of bring a little bit of life to the, to some of the tunes, but modernized them a little bit because it was. It was. For drum sounds, we literally with the mic, we would have a for a shuffle beat, we would just use a broom on a screen. And then one of us would be holding the mic.
Unbelievable.
And that was the shuffle in Midland Street theme in that song on that project.
Wow, that is true do it yourself.
We were old school. And
I
had drums, but I lived in this little apartment and they were at my parents' house and Ted's like, I got it. He goes, grab that. So I played it and he mic'd it and we're like, that works, so we would move on, and so it was so fun the excitement of creating something new. It was just, and then the age that we were, it was explosive and fun. And so we're like, oh my gosh, that works. That's great. Okay. What's next? We realized early on that we wanted to have something that was our own, and the neat thing is, I remember calling him 10 years after that project, and I'm like, okay, what do you think?
You followed up. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, what, I think we did all right. I was like, yeah, me too. So it was, it's fun. I like it. I like it. I don't always listen to all of my music, but I like going back to that one. That's kind of cool.
That's where it all began. And we will return in 2 weeks with part 2 of Jeff Yantz's show on the Michigan Music History Podcast. We want to thank Jeff for coming in, doing the show, and he's going to cover the grounds for his second and third One Trick Ponies albums, his Bullfrog record years, as well as his storied solo career, which he's doing to this day. He's really spent the last 10 years honing his craft, and he's got some deep stories to share with you all. We hope you come back and listen, and have a great one. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
The MMHP is hosted on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and our own Libsyn podcast site. You can also search MMHP989 on Facebook for up-to-the-minute information, as well as both Dr. J and Sir Fred's album picks of the week, posted every weekend. You can connect with Scott on the web at scottbakermusic.com, Dr. J at michiganrockandrolllegends.com, Sir Fred at fredrife.com, and the Electric Kitch at electrickitch.com.
This podcast wouldn't be here without special help from Studio 163's Alan Garcia, our podcast videographer and wingman, Mr. Mike Beatty, MMHP tagline specialist, Mr. Eddie Switek, and of course, Gary Johnson, Fred Rife, the Electric Kitch, and all of our special guests, and especially you listeners. We want to thank you.
You've been listening to the MMHP and the 989. From all of us at the